In League of Legends, basically all sources of damage can be split into one of two types: scalings, which scale with things, and bases, which also scale with things. This division is clearly extremely intuitive, but people very commonly misinterpret the numbers. Imagine you are a Yuumi player. Which of these keystones do you take? Well, if you're a professional playing in the World Championship in 2019, then you'd say Arcane Comet. At least that's what they went with in every single Yuumi game in that tournament. I know that sounds kind of insane. Why would you go Comet on Yuumi? The only synergy between Yuumi and Comet is the slow on the Q, making it easier to land Comet. Meanwhile, Aerie is literally Yuumi. Hell, it was so bad that Riot literally asked people in the patch notes to stop playing Comet Yuumi because it was bringing her win rate down a ton. But then, why did the pros pick it? I see, they always built full AP on Yuumi, and they saw that Comet's AP scaling was twice as big as Aerie's, so they thought it made perfect sense to take it. Do you see why they were wrong? If you don't, I suggest pausing the video and thinking about it for a bit. While you're at it, leave your guess as to why it is in the comments below. Now that you've done that, here's the answer. The AP scaling is not all that matters. The base matters just as much. A 200 AP Yuumi at level 10 would deal around 23% more damage with Comet than if she had 100 AP, but she'd deal around 28% more damage with Aerie. What you actually care about when comparing the impact of a scaling is the ratio between the base and the scaling. And on Aerie, that ratio favors the scaling more than on Comet, so the full AP builds meant pros were screwing themselves over even harder by taking Comet. If you want to have a ratio that lets you compare between the scalings of different stats instead of just AP, then you can just divide that ratio by the gold value per point of the stat. This way, you have the percent increase for every 1 gold spent on the stat. Having read the title, you have probably figured out that this video is about Vel'Koz, specifically about his controversial buff in patch 13.23. If we apply what I introduced before, we get that his passive used to get between 7% and 1.4% more damage per 100 gold spent on AP. And now it gets between 7.9% and 1.5%, plus it has a bit more damage in general. So now it scales harder with AP than before, especially in the earlier mid-game, which favors mid-lane Vel'Koz because he gets more gold and support. And it also favors high-ranked players, because they tend to farm gold more efficiently than low-ranked players. Plus, it favors people who are good at landing abilities in sequence because that's how you get passive procs. If you've browsed r/Vel'Koz recently, you know this lines up well with what they've been asking for, but also that it doesn't line up at all. Which brings me to what this video is actually about. Feedback. If you're watching this in 2023, and you're a social media degenerate like me, then you've probably seen this kind of meme making the rounds. The idea is obviously that Vel'Koz mains provided good feedback, but Freak only saw all of it as saying that Vel'Koz sucks. But the thing is, writing a ton of text doesn't make your feedback good, it usually makes it worse. And this is coming from the guy who once wrote a 3,000 word shitpost about how the warrior jungle enchantment sucks. Or sucked actually, I guess, because RIP. Good feedback relies on 3 things. Focus. The core ideas should be very well spelled out, and made extremely obvious. A rambling post that has nuggets of great feedback hidden in it is not a good feedback, because mining those nuggets out takes a ton of effort. Coherence. Any contradiction raises doubt over all of the feedback, both of its quality and its content. If you write a post about how ADCs are OP, but in the post you complain about mages bot, then no one's gonna understand whether you dislike or like ADCs. Empathy. If you otherize your target audience, then they're going to do the same to you. Starting a post with a very strong statement against Riot is a fantastic way to turn any writer that reads it against you. The feedback that the meme refers to fails on all these points. Starting out with a phrase in all caps by itself already frames Riot as the opposition. It also pulls away from the focus of the feedback, which seems to be that Vel'Koz's mastery curve should be sharper. I say seems because one of the suggestions is making his E easier to hit, which would flatten out the curve since the ability to hit E reliably is one of the main skills that differentiates good and bad Vel'Koz players. Speaking of contradictions, the post starts out being very clearly against buffing bases or scalings, but the first suggested buff is increasing bases, and the second is increasing scalings. Reading that post and others on the Vel'Koz subreddit, it becomes very hard to figure out what is indeed agreed upon, and what isn't. The only thing that everyone seems to agree on is that everyone agrees on everything. So you're left trying to piece out things that people seem like they maybe kind of agree on, all while reading extremely assertive comments that are also very often just factually incorrect. No, Vel'Koz doesn't have a 44% win rate, by the way. All things considered, a conclusion that seems to reasonably describe the feedback is that Vel'Koz is in some state that is not good and needs changing. So, that Vel'Koz sucks, in the most broadest definition of sucking. But the change itself is not what sparked the controversy. No, what did that was Freak's tone when he provided feedback to Vel'Koz players.
So, I don't really enjoy the asinine comments from Vel'Koz mains who don't know how their own champion works because they're wrong. It's frustrating to get yelled at when they're just wrong about what they're talking about. Vel'Koz is a normal spell.
Because he also lacked empathy. But think about it for a bit. Freak is getting 50 times more flame than what anyone is normally expected to endure, even by league standards, and he's demanded to keep empathy for the people who are flaming him. And I'm not just talking about people who tell him to go unalive himself. All the spam about Karthus pings everywhere is also harassment. Imagine having 300 people yelling at you, saying you're awful and need to be fired wherever you go. Could you keep empathy for those people? Meanwhile, Vel'Koz mains on social media dropped all empathy for Freak when he said he was given bad feedback. Being the live design pod lead doesn't give you superhuman emotional control, it just gives you more to lose. Being flamed is still gonna make you otherize anyone who looks like a flamer. This is why you rarely see devs do direct open communication in any game with live updates. It's so hard to keep empathy when you're getting constant harassment. It's better for them to just not interact. And this is where I have to talk about Mortdog. Mortdog is fucking awesome. He made a point of staying an active participant in the TFT community, even when things were looking very bad. And TFT is way better because of it. I think it's clear that Freak is trying to do what Mortdog managed to do, and he's trying because he knows that the payoff for success is the game being way better. But it's also absurdly difficult to do that with League of Legends. We are famous for being the most toxic community in gaming. It's way easier for us to keep empathy for the devs than the other way around. Feedback, being incoherent or unfocused, is expected from players. That's something that takes professional level effort to do correctly. But we don't have any excuse for lacking in the empathy department as well. Those fuckers literally made our favorite game. That's really all I have to say. I just want to get more dogs in League, not just TFT. Please stop flaming Freak, for fuck's sake.
Honest answer? Because typically companies, when they want somebody to work, they want them to, work on the game. This work is not work on the game. So no company's going to pay somebody to do what I do. And doing what I do is incredibly mentally taxing on top of it. And so doing that on top of everything else is, frankly, just insane. And there aren't a lot of people out there on the planet that are as silly and insane as I am. So finding people that are like, I'm going to work 40 plus hours and then also do this on top of things just seems insane.